Our particular claim for Te Rarawa is about our kaitiakitanga duties. I won't go into how that's imbibed in us. It's related to the Y262 claim, and it's also rooted in the Y1040 claim in terms of he whakaputanga. And it's also a part of a national phenomena of a renaissance of entrepreneurial enterprise amongst Māori, Hapu and iwi communities. I represent the tangata whenua presence, which is philosophical, intellectual and physical, and our Hapu, our iwi and our marae. So in terms of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, our tupuna Panakareo explained to our people when he signed the Tiriti o Waitangi that in fact in signing the treaty he was merely relegating the shadow of the land to lie under the auspices of the Queen of England, but the substance would remain with us. Less than 1 year later, he reversed his whakatauki to say actually it could have been a bit of a mistake there. We might have got left with the shadow and the substance might have got swiped away from under us. And it was certainly the case. And I think that this particular case around water is a good example of the shadow and the substance metaphor. People of the time were enamored by that metaphor. And I think it works very well for us, because if you're not in the substance and you're in the shadow, how can you possibly be effective for your people? And part of our aspiration for managing and allocating water and imbibing our values and our cultural understandings into the use of it is simply about that. It's about the sustainability and the survival of our people. The Tangonge Lake, which is a fine example of a lake that's been stolen. And there was a lake there once, and then it was drained, and then when it was drained, the land was all carved up and given away to Pākehās. I can just imagine if a lake way up in the Uruwiras there were to be drained, and then all the water let out and the land balloted out to Pākehā farmers, I'm sure there'd be a bit of an uproar. And if it happened now, it'll there'd be an uproar again now too. So, and the aspect of our case studies has been the Walla Walla forest, where we have an entire, an ancient catchment of tributaries that we live amongst and live off and live with, and yet is being managed by a regional authority of complete strangers, all Pākehā, who live 100 miles away. And it seems absolutely ludicrous that such an organisation would have the ability or the understanding to be able to manage the way and exercise kaitiakitanga principles in the way that we can. And also the 90-mile beach case, no matter how many times you get a good hearing and you get a good ruling and you have some good jurisprudence to take your next step, you get shot down by the legislature. And that's what's happened with us in the 90-mile beach, what's happened with seabed and foreshore. Even we had 5 Pākehā Court of Appeal judges were even overruled. You know, so it shows you that actually even in the court of law we haven't got very much clout in terms of being a priority for government. And I think that's going on in this case as well. Given the suppression of iwi social organisation over the last 100 or so years, and the promotion and promulgation of crown structures, of which the New Zealand Māori Council was one, you would think that there would be ships in the night, but actually we can collaborate, and we are not necessarily enemies, because our objectives and our outcomes for our people are the same. And while we have separate beginnings and different genesis, we are nevertheless committed to the same outcome. We supported this claim as an iwi in terms of the Māori Council because of our interest in water, and also because it needs to be recognised and realised and not sidestepped for quantifying and factoring our interest into these commercial transactions based on our interest in the water. It's obvious to us that the government is consciously choosing to avoid the elephant in the room, which is our interest, by sidelining as an issue, and not without even identifying or trying to quantify it, just sidelining it. So from our point of view, this is clearly a fresh injustice, because it marginalises any potential we may have as tangata whenua and as a Māori population. The proposal by government to recognise tūwhare tōrero in any future regime proves that they do actually understand the issue. But the fact that the rest of us are not included shows that they understand the issue a little bit too much. So the PM's public statement in distancing the government from the recommendation of the tribunal also reveals a clear intention to once again sidestep us and sideline us. So this is, in our view, a clear treaty breach. And the last time this happened was, of course, with the asset sell up by the Labour government. We had to stop it then, and we still haven't been thanked by New Zealand for doing that. I do pay genuine tribute to Sir Graham Latimer and the Council who have led the charge resulting in the legislation that we had in the past, and I certainly take my hat off to Sir Graham and the work that he's achieved and the sacrifices that he's made. So this is another reason that we would support this claim, is that there's a track record, and there is perhaps a voice of Māori that is not strong in the iwi or hapu associations. Perhaps this is the universal Māori who have niche whānau in communities all over the world, not just here in Aotearoa. And so maybe there's a case there for the New Zealand Māori Council to hold a sort of trustee mandate for those Māoris who are not associating much with the iwi, and I certainly wouldn't write it off. The government says water cannot be owned. Perhaps they are right, but it can be manipulated into a capital resource and allocated according to sector-friendly priorities for farming. And this is certainly the case up home and where I come from, and I see all around the country, where water allocation and rights have been promoted to protect Pākehā development over Māori development. And there's hundreds of examples of that. The country is full of examples of across segments of society where Māori as iwi and hapu are relegated to the sideline, just like what is happening now with these asset sales. In my opinion, the mixed ownership model being proposed was an ideal opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, to settle a first principle treaty issue like water and enable Māori values and communities to be involved in its management, and then contain the cost of that settlement into a New Zealand-owned entity that is home-based and focused. That in turn would reassure potential investors, and because it is akin to a public interest, perhaps even with the condition of inalienability, it might assuage the public outcry against asset sales per se. Who knows? The question then becomes how, and in my capacity as an elected leader of the Rarawa iwi, I cannot delegate the inherited responsibilities of my kaitiaki role to anybody but ourselves. And in our case, we have the example of our stolen lake and our captured waterways. Therefore, we have issues that demand our mandate, our presence, and cultural capital. There is potential to achieve this in the government's land and water forum, as I said earlier, but this rift is still wide, and it would require a sustained effort by key individuals to be able to achieve that, but it can be achieved. And the involvement of iwi, hapu, and site-specific issues is related to the issue of governance, which can be contained by that forum. In terms of the commercial, though, what is being proposed by the current government, the time is right. Such is the strength of intent by the government that the PM can disavow the government from this tribunal and flout the jurisprudence that has already been painstakingly laid, and really is, I think, an insult to the legal fraternity. Perhaps governments can just legislate like that, but whatever they want, whatever they do, it will be on the record. It needs to be on the record. And we, as an iwi, will never concede. We will resist every step of the way to the bitter end. The time has come for this tribunal to play every card that it has, in my opinion. And if your friends are tika and pono, then you are required by circumstances to bring a measure of enablement to the situation. 1 or 2 or 3 iwi won't be enough, and there's no entity in existence besides the New Zealand Māori Council that can advocate for all iwi Māori in the way that it does. The solution is obvious. It will involve representatives from both the iwi and from the New Zealand Māori Council. However, it would not be tika to say that the New Zealand Māori Council have a take whenua, and that any interest in the wai belongs to the people via the hapu and iwi. Therefore, the New Zealand Māori Council ought not be empowered to empower itself, but merely behave as one of a group of trustees for a nationwide generic communal interest that it can be complemented by, in terms of roles and responsibilities of iwi and the management of water and the allocation of water at a regional level. So my iwi is Te Rarawa, and I am reminded of my kuia Whina Cooper, who galvanised Māori support for resistance nationally. And we've still got the ingredients to be able to do that again. Knowing her family and her community, coming from her community, I take pride in presenting this submission because I know it is exactly what she would have said. She had the courage of a lion, which led to the reverence of her as a fire of the motu, loved and cherished by all. But less than 20 years later, after her death, she has been relegated to the mists and the myths of the past. And I sincerely hope that this courage will not be lost among us of today's generation, because what we're looking for is greater prosperity, sustainability, and survival. And we need help from lawmakers and from lawbreakers. So, kia kaha tātou.